Part 1. Into the Forest. Chapter 12. The Selectress is chosen. Maisie reappeared out of breath and out of nowhere, crashing into the table clumsily where I sat peeling potatoes for stew. His lack of composure was completely unlike him. I'd never seen him flustered like this before. His face was flushed. His coat was askew and his hair windblown. He looked as if he'd run a very long way. Like all the way from Norwallsend. Running over cobblestones? Unthinkable. Hurry. Hide. They're coming for you. Glanced at Catri by the fire. Both of you. Who? But I knew. Of course I knew. With a fear that made my throat go dry and my heart momentarily stop. Today was the selection day, and Catri and I had skipped it. At the Earl's command. We couldn't have gotten past our protectors, even if we'd wanted to, but I'd given my word that we wouldn't. Who do you think? Lord Noblett, the king's emissary. Flit around, bolting the door. I've just come from the selecting. Everyone expected Lord Noblett to come to town and pronounce Lady Brinley the Selectress. The selection was just a formality, probably to test loyalties. But he insisted on inspecting all the candidates. We thought for show. To make it appear that every young woman had a fair chance. He lined all the young women up and walked the line, going through everyone, even Lady Brinley, and made no selection. He wants to see you and Catri. He looked furious that you weren't there. I swallowed hard against the lump of fear in my throat. I glanced at Catri. I promised the Earl that neither of us would present ourselves as candidates for the king's hand. I thought he would have explained to Lord Noblett, made some excuse why we're ineligible or unsuitable. I was desperately trying to grasp what this turn of events meant. There was no one more beautiful, or from a more powerful family than Lady Brinley. She was the superior candidate. No one denied it. I had to be brave for Catri. I tried to seem unconcerned. So what, if Lord Noblett insists on seeing us? I shrugged. I don't see the danger. The Earl can rest easy. The Rose has failed us. Neither of us are competition for Lady Brinley. Catri rose from her chair. She lifted her chin. I'm going to fix up and present myself with dignity. If the king wants an older woman, I'm his girl. Who am I to deny him his choice of all of us? She'd been in a sullen mood since realizing she was as young-looking as she was going to get. That she was stuck as an older woman. No, Catri. You can't. She ignored me and headed to the bedroom to change. I swore beneath my breath. What were Lord Noblett and the king up to? And the Earl? Did he now mean to sacrifice one of us to the king? Surely no one would care that an old woman like Catri died before her time. But what of the Earl's quest for power and influence? On the other side, was Lord Noblett intent on making fools of us all by selecting Catri for the king to scorn openly? Was this some kind of new strategy for breaking the line of selection? And us, the entire province? Was the king aching for a reason to bring his wrath down on us? See what I have to put up with as candidates for queen? It's time to end this madness. Time to end the line of selection. I tried to go after Catri. Blocked my path. Let her go. Protect yourself. I stared at him. I'm in no danger of being selected. There's no guarantee of that, not in this crazy world. Lord Noblett is up to something. Rhee's voice was low and flat. Ominous. I couldn't argue with him. Lord Noblett is looking for something. He kissed the left hand of every young lady who presented herself. Rhee lifted an eyebrow. He'll want to see yours. I went cold. Maybe it's just coincidence. Maybe. Kissing the left hand is a tradition in the royal circle. Even so, you can't let him in the house. Rhee held his ground. You can't present yourself. You can't let him choose you. And you must protect yourself for the case that Lord Noblett doesn't select you. You can't give the Earl any reason to have your head instead. Ree tapped his chin. We'll have to make an excuse, something that disqualifies you. Something that will make Lord Noblett take Lady Brinley. Something that Lord Fanger will verify. My mind raced, but I couldn't think of anything. Ree paced. The sound of a horse neighing outside made me jump. Hooves thundered on the road in front of the croft, mixed with the sound of carriage wheels bumping over uneven road. The thump of boots on our porch. The sound of male voices, pulling up horses and shouting commands. Giant hogweed. Ree's gaze was focused out the back window on our small field. Hogweed. I pondered the suggestion. Yes. I spoke mostly to myself. As I weighed the wisdom of Ree's suggestion, a sense of calm settled over me. In the garden. Ree nodded. You got into it in the garden, or the field yesterday. You must stay out of the sun for a week or more, or your skin will burn and scar. You can blame it on me, your terrible Municelli, a real trickster. Terrible. I put it there, for you to stumble into unaware. The soft spot in my heart for him grew. You're a genius, Ree. Even as I spoke, I frowned. But will they look for it? Don't worry. I can take care of that. He grabbed a blanket and tossed it to me. Cover yourself from head to toe. Even your face. Don't give them any reason to suspect a lie. I began wrapping the blanket around myself. Catri. Will she back me up? I have superior powers of suggestion. I'll convince her. They're about to knock. Hold your ground. Ree bounded off toward Catri's bedroom, just as a loud rap shook the front door. I pulled a doily that Mother had crocheted from our one small end table and tossed it over my head and face as a veil. I steeled myself. Who's there? As if I didn't know and fear. Open up by order of King Kylan IV and Lord Fanger, the Earl of the Realm. The voice was steady, fierce, official, and male. As I hesitated, Catri strolled from her room dressed in all her finery, her hair up and done. I couldn't believe she'd gotten ready so quickly. I suspected Ree had something to do with it. She brushed past me and flung the door wide open. A nobleman and his page stood on our stoop, flanked by soldiers in the king's livery. The Earl's men had stepped down and back. The page spoke. Lord Noblett is here to interview Catri Weaver and Maisie Jayne Rose for the position of Selectress. Are your daughters at home, ma'am? Daughters? Catri lifted her chin proudly. I'm an unmarried maid. I'm Catri Weaver. I huddled in the shadows of the corner, watching in horror. Lord Noblett's eyes narrowed. The Earl appeared on the stoop behind him. As he caught a glimpse of Catri, he seemed to relax ever so slightly. She is who she says, my lord. She has the aging disease, but she is yet young. Lord Noblett scowled. Traveling is difficult for a woman of her apparent age. Which is why, as I explained, I didn't call her to the village, the Earl said in a supercilious tone. I had to hand it to the Earl. He had guts to speak to Lord Noblett like that. And he thought on his feet. Lord Noblett held out his hand. Your left hand, ma'am. Catri held hers out with a smile, letting Lord Noblett take it and lift it to his lips. A kiss from the king. My apologies for disturbing you. He glanced around the room and spotted me skulking in the shadows. Maisie Jayne Rose? Catri turned over her shoulder to look at me. That's she. My sister. You must forgive her. She can't come into the light. She accidentally got into a patch of giant hogweed yesterday while bringing the cow in from the field. The burrs and sap got all over her before she noticed. She's lucky none got in her eyes or she'd be blind. We got her washed up with soap and water immediately. No burns, fortunately. But now the light will burn her delicate skin. She has to stay out of the sun for at least a week or more. Catri looked surprised by the words that had come out of her mouth, as if she hadn't meant to speak them at all. Good job, Ree. I nodded miserably. I've no idea where the hogweed came from. Blew out of the duve, I imagine. It's always throwing weeds our way unexpectedly. I'm sorry, my lord, but I couldn't present myself in this condition. Lord Noblett brushed past Catri into the croft, striding to where I shrunk into the corner. You didn't mention this, Fanger. The Earl followed him in. Hogweed's a problem in the province, my lord. Get into a patch and it can scar and blind, as they say. Very nasty weed. Lord Noblett studied me in my shapeless wrappings with my hands gloved and tucked neatly away in the folds, and my doily veil covering my face. His eyes were very narrow. He held out his hand. Your left hand. I held out my gloved hand. Take the glove off. I shook my head. I'm sorry, my lord, but I can't expose you to it, nor can I bear it to the light. Not for a week or more, until the danger of burning has passed. He crossed his arms. I can wait. I must see something of your skin. It's the law. I didn't want him lingering in the province for a week or more. I certainly didn't want him standing in my home with his arms crossed for an instant more than he had to. I couldn't afford to let him wait until I was healed from the toxins of the hogweed. I bit my lip. Would a finger do? My baby finger is the only part of my hand unaffected. A finger will suffice. He waved his hand, signaling me to hurry. I defiantly pulled the glove off my baby finger. What harm could the sight of so small a finger do, especially in the dim light of the corner? Give him what he wants and let him go. Who in their right mind would choose the king's wife, judge her the most beautiful woman in the province, based on the tip of a little finger, even a beautiful little finger? I held it out for him, arrogantly, like a posh woman of stature. He lifted my mostly gloved hand to his face and kissed my finger with a tickling brush of his mustache. He held my gloved hand, staring at my finger uncomfortably long. A grin creased his face, lighting his eyes and lifting the corners of his mustache. He looked almost bewitched. His gaze rose from the tip of my finger to my veiled eyes. Congratulations, Miss Rose. You're going to be our next queen. My blood ran cold. I went into shock and stumbled back against the wall. Behind him, the Earl paled with anger. I thought he might draw his sword and slay me right there. Catri let out a canting cry of anguish. I pulled my hand back. No. I don't want to be queen. I'm not beautiful. I'm not born and bred to be queen. My sister needs me here, as you can see. Your little finger says otherwise, Lord Noblett said. I reached to unwrap my blanket. Reappeared, stepping into the room from thin air, pulling at my skirts for me to stop. When you're settled in the palace, you can send for your sister. She'll have the best physicians and magicians to attend to her. In the meantime, the Earl will look after her. He turned over his shoulder to the Earl. Won't you, Lord Fanger? The Earl nodded, but his jaw was ticking. He was furious. If Lord Noblett's men hadn't been with him, I was sure the Earl would have tried to kill him, king's man or no. I froze. Did I believe him? Could I trust him? Was it possible to help Catri before I died in some mysterious way? The look on Lord Noblett's face was pure evil delight. He was issuing me a challenge to discard my blanket and drop the charade. If I did, I had no doubt that he'd order his men to stab me through in front of my sister and the Earl. It was a capital crime to lie to the king's agent. I pulled my blanket tighter around me and lowered my face to cover my anger and fear. Lord Noblett laughed softly. Good. That's better. What do you think now of being chosen Selectress? I'm honored, my lord. I choked the words out. That's more like it. The king will appreciate how humble you are. Humility is a valuable trait in a wife, especially the wife of so great a king. He pulled a velvet ring box from his pocket and opened it to reveal a betrothal ring of purest gold sitting in a bed of black velvet. It was the most beautiful ring, the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. It was so brilliant and stunning that I swore it actually spoke to me audibly. Surely it was whispering my name. Queen Maisie. Queen Maisie. I glanced at Catri. She was dazzled by the ring, but she didn't appear to hear anything. I took a step back with a hand to my throat. The ring had a terrible beauty, dark and seductive, a mirror of the soul. A center diamond caught the light tantalizingly. It was surrounded by deep green emeralds, rubies the color of blood, and dark blue sapphires like the clear night sky. Lord Noblett motioned impatiently for me to give him my hand. "But I'm gloved," I protested, with my left hand still pressed against the hollow of my throat. "It won't fit." He took a step into me and wrenched my hand free roughly. He felt up my fingers through my gloves. Such small, slight fingers. The ring is sized large to accommodate any hand. "It will fit." With a swift motion, he jammed it onto my ring finger over my glove. As the king's agent, with the power vested in me by His Majesty as his trusted servant, I pronounce you Selectress of the realm and betrothed of His Majesty King Kylan IV. I gasped and stared at the ring, temporarily mesmerized, as the bizarre pronouncement rang in my ears. "The ring will size itself in time." He motioned for his guards as he held fast to my elbow. "Escort our next queen to the carriage. We leave for the royal circle immediately." "No." I shook my head. "I need time to pack. I need time to get my household in order. To make sure Catri has everything she needs." He shoved me at the guards. "There's nothing of your shabby belongings and clothing fit to wear before the king. Fortunately, His Majesty is a generous, thoughtful man. As a token of his affection, the king has sent a chest of gowns, made by the king's own trusted tailor for his chosen bride. We have a seamstress in our party who can make any necessary adjustments. You need bring nothing. All will be provided." I reached out for Catri, but one of the guards stepped forward and grabbed me. He tossed me over his shoulder and headed toward the door. "Catri." I stretched out to her with tears in my eyes. Catri's eyes locked onto the ring on my hand. She wouldn't meet my eye. Ree ran after us. "I'll take care of her, Sorella. You take care of yourself." "No. No." I kicked and screamed, but the guard stuffed me into the waiting carriage and locked me in with the click of a golden handle. Lord Noblett mounted his waiting horse and nodded to the driver of the carriage. The driver clucked to the horses. The carriage jolted forward. I held my wrappings tightly and tucked my ringed hand into my blanket out of sight, wishing I at least had the protection of Mother's dagger. But I was defenseless. I looked out the window, hoping for a final glimpse of Catri. But she was nowhere to be seen. She hadn't come out to see me carted off. I slunk into the corner of the seat in the shadows like a woman, truly afraid of the light. I was almost too stunned and shocked for rational thought. How had my baby finger enchanted Lord Noblett against my will? Was the Douve rose full of dark magic, even before the fear Dorka touched it? And most worrying of all, what was I going to do when Lord Noblett discovered that I was not beautiful?